There is a moment after a small mistake when the room becomes much quieter than it should be. You say something awkward in a conversation. You send an email with one wrong word. You forget a name, miss a detail, laugh at the wrong second, or notice someone's face change for reasons you cannot prove. Outside, almost nothing has happened. No alarm sounds. No one points. The world keeps moving. But inside, a voice begins. There it is again. You ruined it. You always do this. You should have known better. Everyone noticed. They are only being polite. You are not as smart as they think. You're not as kind as you pretend. You are not disciplined. You are not lovable. You are not enough. The voice does not need a full case. It only needs a small crack, and through that crack, it turns the entire self into evidence. What is strange is that many people call this voice honesty. They call it discipline. They call it high standards, self-awareness, realism, ambition, humility. They say if I did not speak to myself this way, I would become lazy. If I did not punish myself, I would stop improving. If I did not attack myself first, the world would attack me harder. And for a while, that explanation may even seem to work. The critic can produce movement. It can get the paper finished. It can make the child behave. It can keep the face controlled, the grades high, the body smaller, the words careful, the room clean, the appetite hidden, the anger swallowed, the desire disguised. It can make a person look impressive from the outside, but that does not mean it is helping. A cage can create order too. The inner critic is not always trying to make you better. Often, it is trying to make you safer by making you smaller. It wants you to be so alert, so ashamed, so corrected in advance that no one else gets the chance to humiliate you first. It believes cruelty is protection. It believes if it can wound you privately, the public wound will hurt less. It believes that if you never become too visible, too needy, too proud, too alive, then maybe you will not be punished for existing incorrectly. This is why the voice can feel so intimate and so foreign at the same time. It speaks from inside your head, but it often carries the temperature of old rooms. A kitchen where a parent sighed before speaking. A classroom where the teacher read your answer in front of everyone. A dinner table where silence meant danger. A mirror where your body became a problem before it became a home. A house where love was real, maybe, but always conditional on being less difficult. You may not remember the first time you learned to criticize yourself before anyone else could. That kind of learning is often quiet. It does not always arrive as a single wound. Sometimes it is thousands of small instructions. Do not be too loud. Do not be too proud. Do not need too much. Do not make mistakes. Do not embarrass us. Do not look foolish. Do not ask again. Do not cry like that. Do not think you are special. A child does not only learn the rules of a home, a child learns the tone of the rules, the raised eyebrow, the delay before affection returns, the way approval can vanish after a mistake, the way a room changes when disappointment enters it. Over time, the child may begin to carry that room inside the body. Later, even when no one is there, the room appears. Freud called one part of the mind the superego. In simple terms, it is the internalized judge, the authority inside us that carries prohibitions, ideals, and punishment. The word can sound old, like something from a dusty lecture hall, but the experience is not. old. Anyone who has made a small mistake and immediately felt morally contaminated knows something like an internal court. There is the accused, the prosecutor, the witness, and the judge. Somehow, all of them are you. That court can be useful in a limited sense. Human beings need conscience. We need the ability to feel remorse, to correct ourselves, to notice harm, to take responsibility. Without any inner judge, we would become dangerous in other ways. But the inner critic is not the same thing as conscience. Conscience says, this action caused harm. The critic says, you are harm. Conscience says, repair this. The critic says, you are beyond repair. That difference matters. One points toward action. The other points toward identity. One helps you return to the world with more care. The other makes the world feel unsafe because you are in it. The critic does not merely name a mistake. It turns the mistake into a verdict about the entire person. This is why inner criticism can feel endless. If the problem is an action, the action can be repaired. If the problem is the self, then there is nowhere to go. You can apologize, improve, revise, train, study, change your habits, change your language, change your body, change your life, and still feel guilty for being the one who did all of it. The voice adapts. If you succeed, it says the success was luck. If you fail, it says the failure reveals the truth. If someone loves you, it says they do not know you yet. If someone leaves, it says they finally understood. If you rest, it says you are lazy. If you work, it says you are behind. If you are quiet, it says you are boring. If you speak, it says you are too much. A voice like that cannot be satisfied because satisfaction is not its purpose. Its purpose is surveillance. It keeps watch for anything that could become shame. It searches your memory for proof that you should stay humble, guarded, corrected. It scans future conversations before they happen. It replays old conversations after they are gone. It makes life feel like a performance review that never ends. And then it calls that vigilance maturity. But maturity is not the same as living under permanent suspicion of yourself. There is a kind of self-awareness that opens the world, and another kind that closes it. The first says, I can see myself more clearly so I can choose better. The second says, I must watch myself constantly, because if I relax, I will become unacceptable. One is consciousness, the other is captivity. Paul Gilbert, who developed compassion-focused therapy, has written extensively about shame and self-criticism. His work helps clarify something important. The inner critic is often not a calm intelligence system. It is closer to a threat system. It is the part of the mind that detects danger, predicts rejection, and prepares the body for social injury. It does not ask what is true in a balanced way. It asks, where is the threat and how do we prevent it? That is why criticism feels urgent. The body responds as if a real danger has entered the room. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your mind starts building a case against you. A small error becomes a future catastrophe. A neutral expression becomes disgust. A delayed reply becomes abandonment. A slight imperfection becomes proof that you should never have tried. The critic calls this preparation. It says it is making you stronger. But much of the time, it is not strengthening you. It is keeping you braced. A braced body can survive impact, but it cannot easily learn, connect, create, or rest. It is always waiting for the blow. This is why harsh self-talk may appear motivating in the short term, while damaging the person in the long term. Fear can move a body. Shame can produce obedience. Panic can generate energy. But a life built on fear often becomes narrower with every achievement. The person succeeds, but cannot receive success. They improve, but cannot feel improved. They avoid mistakes, but also avoid life. The critic does not only punish failure, it punishes exposure. It punishes the moment before you send the application, post the work, speak honestly, ask for what you need, wear what you want, begin again, or let someone see you without performance. It knows that visibility is dangerous. It remembers, or thinks it remembers, what happened when visibility once brought pain, so it attacks before the world can. It says, do not say that, do not wear that, do not think that, do not try that, do not be proud, do not be needy, do not show anger, do not show joy, do not be strange, do not be ordinary, do not take up too much space, do not become someone others can target. In this way, the inner critic often disguises fear as wisdom. It does not say, I am afraid. It says, be realistic. It does not say, I remember being humiliated. It says, you are embarrassing. It does not say, closeness feels dangerous. It says, no one would truly want you. It does not say, I am terrified of your ambition. It says, who do you think you are? That last sentence is one of the critic's favorite weapons. Who do you think you are? It sounds like moral correction, but often it is a command to return to the assigned size. Do not rise above the role. Do not step outside the old story. Do not become visible enough to disturb the people who learn to recognize you only when you were small. This is where perfectionism becomes more than a desire to do well. Perfectionism often presents itself as devotion to excellence. Sometimes it is. There are people who care deeply about craft, precision, discipline, and beauty. But the inner critic can hijack these values. It can turn craft into avoidance, precision into paralysis, discipline into punishment, and excellence into a way of never being seen unfinished. A person may edit the same sentence for hours, not because the sentence matters that much, but because sending it would make the self visible. A person may call themselves ambitious, while never completing the work that would expose the ambition to judgment. A person may say they have high standards, when the truth is that no finished thing can protect the fantasy of the perfect thing. The critic prefers potential to reality. Potential cannot be rejected. Potential cannot be compared. Potential cannot receive comments, silence, indifference, or misunderstanding. Once the work enters the world, it becomes mortal. It can fail. It can be ignored. It can be loved for the wrong reasons. It can reveal that you are talented but not magical, sincere but not flawless, capable but still human. To the critic, human is not enough, so it keeps you almost ready to speak, almost ready to publish, almost ready to leave, almost ready to love, almost ready to become visible. Almost ready is one of the safest places for the inner critic, because nothing real can happen there. The future remains clean because it has not touched the world. Kristin Neff's research on self-compassion challenges the belief that people need cruelty in order to grow. Self-compassion is often misunderstood as softness, self-pity, or excuse-making. But in its actual form, it includes mindfulness, common humanity, and kindness toward the self in moments of failure. It does not say, nothing matters. It says, this hurts, this is human, and I can face it without becoming my own enemy. That distinction is coldly practical. A person who can face failure without self-hatred can look at the failure more directly. They do not need to hide from it, deny it, inflate it, or turn it into a secret trial of their worth. They can ask, what happened? What needs repair? What can be learned? What is mine to carry and what is not? The critic claims it is the only path to accountability, but it often destroys the conditions that make accountability possible. When every mistake becomes a statement about your worth, you either collapse or defend. You either drown in shame or argue with reality. Neither response is the same as learning. Shame bends the mind inward. It does not say, I did something wrong. It says, I am wrong. Under shame, the self becomes the emergency. The person is no longer focused on the repair. They are focused on hiding, disappearing, explaining, proving, attacking themselves before anyone else can attack them. The critic says this is morality, but morality that makes repair impossible may be closer to self-obsession than responsibility. There is a strange narcissism in extreme self-hatred, not because the person admires themselves, but because they cannot stop making everything evidence about themselves. One awkward conversation becomes proof of their essential failure. One mistake becomes a cosmic diagnosis. One rejection becomes the final truth of their lovability. The self becomes both disgusting and enormous. The critic keeps you at the center even when it is insulting you. This is why it can be so hard to escape. The voice gives pain a structure. It makes suffering feel meaningful. If you feel bad because you are defective, then at least the world is explainable. If people leave because you are unlovable, then the chaos has a cause. If you fail because you are secretly inadequate, then uncertainty becomes identity. A painful identity is still an identity. The critic offers an answer to ambiguity, and ambiguity is terrifying. Maybe they were tired. Maybe the room was distracted. Maybe the job was not right. Maybe the person's silence had nothing to do with you. Maybe the mistake was ordinary. Maybe the future is not decided. The critic hates maybe. It would rather give you a brutal certainty than allow you to live in the open space of not knowing. Brutal certainty can feel like control. If you are the problem, then perhaps you can control everything by punishing yourself enough. If you monitor every word, shrink every need, perfect every performance, and never let yourself relax, maybe nothing bad will happen. It is a terrible bargain, but it has a logic. Many people make this bargain very young. They do not decide it consciously. They absorb it. A child in an unpredictable environment may learn that self-attack is a form of preparation. If I know what is wrong with me first, I will be less shocked when someone else says it. If I become my own bully, maybe the bully outside will have less power. If I stay ashamed, maybe I will stay safe. The tragedy is that the outside critic may disappear, but the inner critic keeps the relationship alive. Years later, a person can move to another city, earn money, find better friends, build a new life, and still carry the old voice like a hidden parent in the walls. No one is yelling now, but the body still lowers its volume. No one is mocking now, but the face still prepares for humiliation. No one is withholding love now, but the person still acts as if affection can be revoked at any second. That is how the critic becomes a haunting. not a memory you recall, but a relationship you continue. Carl Jung gives another way of looking at this. The inner critic often stands guard at the border of the persona, the acceptable face we show the world. It watches for anything that might violate the image we learn to maintain. Too angry, too soft, too proud, too sexual, too childish, too ambitious, too dependent, too strange, too alive. The critic sees these parts approaching the surface and pushes them back down. In Jungian terms, many of these rejected parts belong to the shadow. Not because they are evil, but because they were disowned. The shadow is not only the monster, it is also the vitality we were told was dangerous. The anger that could have protected us, the desire that could have guided us, the pride that could have helped us stand upright, the need that could have connected us to others, the joy that was too loud for the room that raised us. The inner critic does not simply say, "Do not make mistakes." It says, "Do not become whole." It protects the persona by attacking whatever threatens to make you more complete than your old environment allowed. It may shame your ambition because someone once punished your confidence. It may shame your tenderness because someone once used need against you. It may shame your anger because anger once made love disappear. So the critic is not only a voice of correction, it can be a voice of exile. It keeps sending parts of you away, then wonders why you feel empty. It removes the dangerous parts, the embarrassing parts, the hungry parts, the grieving parts, the desiring parts, until the person left behind is acceptable, but barely alive. This is one reason people can be high-functioning and deeply absent from themselves. They perform well. They say the right thing. They maintain the image. They do not cause too much trouble. They do not ask for too much. They do not risk too much. They do not reveal too much. And from the outside, this may look like maturity. From the inside, it may feel like living as a hostage to the acceptable version of yourself. The critic calls this protection. But protection from what? From rejection, maybe? From shame? From social punishment? From repeating an old humiliation? From being seen in a form that once brought pain? These fears are not imaginary just because they are outdated. Many people did learn that visibility was punished. Many did learn that need was dangerous. Many did learn that mistakes led to withdrawal, ridicule, or attack. This is why the critic cannot be dismissed with a cheerful sentence. It knows too much. It knows the old rooms. It knows the exact weaknesses. It knows which memories to touch. It knows how to sound like truth. And in one specific historical sense, it may once have been right. There may have been a time when shrinking did reduce harm. There may have been a time when self-monitoring prevented punishment. There may have been a time when attacking yourself first helped you survive the attack from outside. But survival is not the same as living. A strategy that saved you in a small room can destroy you in an open field. A voice that helped you avoid humiliation as a child can prevent you from speaking as an adult. A rule that kept you attached to a critical parent can keep you loyal to people who repeat the same wound. A shame that once kept you safe can later become the reason you never discover what safety feels like. Internal family systems offers a useful lens here, even if we use it only as a metaphor. It suggests that the mind has parts, and some painful parts may actually be protectors with extreme methods. The critic, in that sense, may not be a demon. It may be a guard, but not every guard knows the war is over. A guard who was trained in a burning city may keep breaking windows in a peaceful home because smoke is all it knows how to smell. This does not mean the critic is secretly wise. It means its brutality may have a history. It may be trying to prevent old pain with old weapons. The problem is that it cannot tell the difference between a real threat and a new life. It hears possibility as danger. It hears confidence as arrogance. It hears rest as collapse. It hears desire as humiliation waiting to happen. So when you try to change, the critic may become louder. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because change threatens its job. If you become kinder to yourself, what happens to the part that believed cruelty was the only thing keeping you safe? If you become visible, what happens to the part that survived by hiding? If you begin to trust your own voice, what happens to the old court inside you? The critic fears unemployment. It fears a life where you no longer need to be threatened into existence. It fears that without its punishment, you will become careless, selfish, foolish, exposed. It cannot imagine a self guided by care. It only trusts a self controlled by fear. This is why replacing criticism with compassion can feel false at first. The harsh voice sounds serious. The kind voice sounds naive. The accusation sounds intelligent. The reassurance sounds like a trick. If you have spent years believing that cruelty is honesty, then gentleness may feel like lying, but gentleness is not denial. There is a way to be honest without being violent. There is a way to say, I made a mistake, without adding, I am a mistake. There is a way to say, this needs work, without adding, I am worthless. There is a way to say, I hurt someone, without disappearing into shame so completely that repair becomes impossible. The critic collapses all distinctions. It makes the self and the act into one object. It takes a bad sentence, a failed attempt, an awkward moment, a messy emotion, and declares the entire person guilty. This is not precision. It is laziness wearing the robe of judgment. True accountability is more exact. It looks closely. It separates harm from identity, responsibility from self-destruction, guilt from shame, growth from punishment. It asks for repair, not annihilation. It asks the person to become more present, not less. The critic often makes people less present. After it attacks, they withdraw into themselves. They replay, rehearse, shrink, apologize excessively, avoid the next attempt, or become defensive because the pain is too great. They may look responsible, but inwardly, they are no longer with the other person or the task. They are trapped in a private courtroom, trying to survive the sentence. This is why the voice is not trying to help in the way it claims. Help expands capacity. The critic often reduces it. Help makes the next honest action more possible. The critic makes action feel contaminated. Help allows contact with reality. The critic drags reality into an old myth of defectiveness. There is another danger. The inner critic can become morally addictive. If you feel bad enough, you may believe you have done enough. You punish yourself after a mistake, and the punishment feels like repayment. Instead of repairing the damage, you suffer privately and call it accountability. The pain becomes a substitute for change. This is common. A person hurts someone, then spirals into self-hatred. I am terrible. I ruin everything. I should disappear. The focus shifts from the person harmed to the person hating themselves. The critic seems moral, but it can quietly protect the person from the humility of repair. It is easier sometimes to hate yourself dramatically than to apologize clearly and change your behavior. So the critic is not always the enemy of ego. Sometimes it is ego in disguise. It keeps the self at the center of the story, even through condemnation. It says, "Look how awful I am. Look how uniquely broken I am. Look how impossible I am." But the task may be much simpler and more frightening. Listen, repair, learn, continue. A compassionate inner voice is not necessarily gentle in a sentimental way. It can be firm. It can say, "This matters. You need to stop. You need to apologize. You need to practice. You need to tell the truth." But it does not need to dehumanize you in order to guide you. It does not confuse cruelty with seriousness. The critic will object to this. It will say, "Without me, you will become weak. Without me, you will excuse everything. Without me, you will lose your edge." This is the abuser's logic inside the self. You need me. No one else will tell you the truth. I hurt you because I care. You would be nothing without me. A voice can be internal and still be abusive. That sentence is difficult because many people are loyal to the critic. They feel that hating themselves is proof of humility. They feel that accepting kindness would make them arrogant. They feel that shame is the last thing standing between them and becoming morally disgusting. The critic has convinced them that it is the guardian of decency, but decency built on self-hatred is unstable. It depends on fear rather than love. It may control behavior, but it cannot create freedom. It may prevent certain mistakes, but it also prevents creativity, intimacy, rest, play, courage, and the ordinary dignity of being unfinished. A person under the critic's rule does not simply avoid doing wrong, they avoid existing too openly. Their life becomes a long negotiation with imagined judgment. Should I speak? Was that too much? Did I sound stupid? Do they hate me? Did I look needy? Was I selfish? Should I apologize again? Should I disappear for a while? Should I become easier to love by becoming less real? The tragedy is not only pain, the tragedy is reduction. A whole human being becomes a self-correction project. The mind does not wake up into wonder, curiosity, desire, grief, tenderness, or contact with the world. It wakes up into management. How do I manage my flaws? How do I manage perception? How do I manage the risk of being known? And if this continues for years, the person may no longer know what they want. Desire itself has been criticized too many times. They know what would be acceptable, impressive, safe, useful, admirable, defensible. But wanting without defense feels dangerous. Wanting is vulnerable. Wanting gives the world something to refuse. So the critic attacks desire before desire can be disappointed. It says, "You do not really want that. You could never do that. That is childish. That is selfish. That is embarrassing. That is not for people like you." And gradually, the person mistakes numbness for wisdom. This is one of the darker functions of the inner critic. It does not only respond after you make a mistake, it prevents lives from being attempted. It kills possibilities before they become visible enough to be mourned. The book not written, the conversation not started, the relationship not pursued, the apology not made, the boundary not set, the dance not danced, the city not moved to, The self not allowed to emerge. No disaster happens. That is why it can go unnoticed. The life simply becomes smaller than it needed to be. From the outside, nothing seems wrong. The person is careful. They are pleasant. They are productive enough. They may even be admired. But inside, there is a quiet violence occurring every day. A thought rises, and another thought strikes it down. A feeling appears, and another feeling shames it. A wish begins to form, and the old voice says, "Who do you think you are?" Over time, the person may start to believe that this is personality. I am just hard on myself. I am just realistic. I am just self-aware. But what if self-awareness without mercy becomes another form of blindness? What if staring at your flaws all day does not help you see yourself more clearly, but only trains you to forget the parts that were never allowed to be flawed? This is where the word help begins to break down. A voice that makes you more accurate can help. A voice that makes you more capable of repair can help. A voice that makes you braver, more honest, more connected, more responsible, more alive can help. But a voice that makes you disappear and then praises the disappearance as discipline may not be helping at all. It may simply be continuing the work of a world that once taught you to fear your own existence. That is hard to admit because it means the critic may not be your deepest truth. It may be an inheritance. It may be a borrowed cruelty. It may be an old authority still using your mouth. It may be the internal echo of people, systems, families, schools, religions, cultures, or relationships that taught you love was conditional on your self-erasure. This does not mean you blame everything forever. It means you stop mistaking the oldest voice for the truest one. Age is not truth. Familiarity is not truth. A sentence repeated for 20 years can still be false. A voice that knows your wounds can still misunderstand your life. But because the critic is familiar, peace can feel suspicious. A person may hear a kinder inner voice and reject it immediately. That is too easy. That is indulgent. That is not realistic. They may feel safer with the old cruelty because at least it has the sound of seriousness. The new voice has no authority yet. Authority must be built. At first, the compassionate voice may be small. It may not sound convincing. It may not erase shame. It may only say, pause. It may say, this is a mistake, not a verdict. It may say, we can repair this without turning against ourselves. It may say, fear is present, but fear is not the judge. It may say, you do not have to become smaller to become better. The critic will interrupt. It will roll its eyes. It will say pathetic. It will say you are making excuses. It will say, this is why you will never change. And maybe, for a long time, the old voice will be louder. That does not make it right. It only means it has had more practice. A new inner voice is not born with authority. It gains authority through repetition, through evidence, through the slow discovery that kindness does not lead to collapse. You make a mistake, refuse to annihilate yourself, and still take responsibility. You rest, and the world does not end. You speak, and not everyone leaves. You create imperfectly, and the imperfect thing becomes real enough to teach you. You disappoint someone, repair, and remain human. This is how the nervous system learns something the critic never believed. You can survive without self-attack. You can improve without humiliation. You can be guilty without being worthless. You can be seen without being destroyed. The critic may never vanish completely. Maybe some part of it will always live in the walls, whispering when you are tired, exposed, rejected, or close to something you care about. The goal may not be to silence it forever. Silence can become another perfection project. Now I must be healed correctly. Now I must never criticize myself. Now even my recovery becomes a place to fail. No. The deeper change is not that the voice never speaks. The deeper change is that you no longer automatically believe it. You hear it, and you recognize the accent of the old room. You hear it, and you ask what it is protecting. You hear it, and you do not hand it the gavel immediately. There is a difference between listening and obeying. The critic says, "You are disgusting." You might hear, "I am afraid of being rejected." The critic says, "Do not try." You might hear, "I am afraid of being seen failing." The critic says, "No one loves you." You might hear, "Closeness is activating an old wound." The critic says, "You are lazy." You might hear, "I am exhausted," and fear has turned rest into guilt. This translation does not excuse everything. It gives you more accurate information. The critic speaks in accusations because accusations were the language it learned. Beneath them may be fear, grief, loneliness, anger, desire, and memory. If you only fight the accusation, you may miss the wound beneath it. That wound may not need another prosecutor. It may need a witness. To witness yourself is different from praising yourself. It is quieter. It means seeing the whole scene, the mistake and the context, the harm and the fear, the pattern and the history, the responsibility and the humanity, the part of you that caused damage and the part that learned damage as a native language. This kind of seeing can be painful because it removes the drama of total condemnation. Total condemnation is awful, but it is simple. I am bad. I ruin everything. I should disappear. Complexity is harder. I did something hurtful, and I can repair. I learned to attack myself, and I can learn another way. I am afraid, and fear is not the same as truth. The critic hates complexity because complexity weakens the sentence. Return to the mirror. The mistake is still there. The awkward moment happened. The email had an error. The conversation did not go perfectly. Someone may have judged you. Someone may not have noticed at all. The world is still unclear. The critic wants to close the case immediately. Guilty? Defective? Not enough. But maybe for one moment, you do not accept the trial on its terms. Maybe you ask who taught this court to speak. Maybe you notice that the voice in your head has the rhythm of someone else's disappointment. Maybe you realize that what you call discipline has often been fear in formal clothing. This does not make the voice disappear. It only makes it less holy. That matters. A critic with divine authority can rule a life. A critic seen as a scared, outdated, brutal protector becomes something else. Still loud, still dangerous, still capable of damage, but no longer the final truth. You may still need standards. You may still need conscience. You may still need correction, apology, effort, practice, restraint, honesty, and change. But you may not need a voice that destroys the self in order to manage behavior. You may not need to live as both prisoner and guard. Maybe the critic once helped you survive a world where mistakes were not safe, where love could be withdrawn, where humiliation arrived quickly, where being too visible brought punishment. Maybe it learned to strike first because waiting felt unbearable. Maybe it believed shrinking was the same as protection. But the question is not whether it once made sense. Many prisons make sense during a war. The question is whether you are willing to keep living in one after the war has moved somewhere else. There may be no dramatic ending, no clean liberation, no final mourning when the voice is gone and the self is pure. More likely, there is only the next small moment when the old voice begins again, and something in you does not bow as quickly. Something pauses. Something listens beneath the cruelty for the fear. Something decides that being corrected is not the same as being condemned. Maybe the voice in your head is not criticizing you because it knows the real you. Maybe it is criticizing you because it is terrified that the real you might live without its permission. And maybe the most frightening possibility is not that the critic has been lying to you. Maybe the most frightening possibility is that it was never your conscience at all, but a cage that learned to speak in the voice of truth.